Well, I asked, where's the beef? Let's call this for what this is. Oh my God! They are so hopelessly woke. How dare you? That is the intellectual capital of the left today. Give me a break. You are now watching the Daily Roundup. There we go. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned into the Daily Roundup on this, a Wednesday, February 8th, 2023. I'm David Menzies, and my co-host, well, let me tell you a little bit about my co-host. You know what, folks? Today is National Kite Flying Day, and she will not be flying a kite because, well, A, it's February, B, it's freezing cold, and C, wouldn't you know it, there is no wind chill for a change. Unbelievable. She is the she-devil with a sword. She is the Khaleesi of Northern Alberta. She is Sheila Gunn Reid. Sheila, we mock these national days, but this has to be the most stupid one ever, especially for those residing in this hemisphere. National Kite Flying Day. Have you ever seen a kite airborne in Canada in the month of February?
No. It's National Kite Flying Day. It's also National Laugh and Get Rich Day, which I think if you work for McKinsey, is probably every single day of the week. I was working with Alexa on something, and McKinsey worked for Purdue, which is one of the companies behind the opioid crisis, while working for the FDA on the approval and use of opioids. So they're getting rich on both sides. They did the same thing in Quebec. They worked for Pfizer while working for the Quebec government about the implementation of their COVID restrictions and vaccine program. So they're working both sides, getting rich in the middle. And so Laugh and Get Rich Day, yep, that's every day down at McKinsey. It's National Opera Day. Have you ever been to the opera, David?
Do you know what? I've driven past it in Toronto. I'm always, putting the windows down to see if I can hear any of the high notes, but I don't think I have. I mean, I'm just so not into opera. Sheila, how about yourself?
Do I seem like I'm into opera? Although I have seen you dress like one of those Rubenesque Viking women that you often see depicted in operas.
Well, I remember in the film The Running Man, the Schwarzenegger film, I think of early 90s or late 80s.
Yeah.
And there was a character, a villain, a supervillain, and his theme was opera-based. Although we found out the hard way with all the lights he wore on his costume. Don't be in a building when the, what do you call that? The sprinklers go off? Because you get electrocuted.
We have a very packed pierogi of a day today, so I should tell everybody what we're doing. Then we'll get into it because the handshake scene around the world happened yesterday, and I was full of jokes about it. So
I want to hear that.
I don't know if you've seen it yet. This is exciting.
No.
You'll get to see it for the first time.
Lady Menzoid flagged this to me last night. She said, you have to see, if I think what you're talking about is this, Sheila. She described it as perhaps the most reluctant handshake in world history.
It was beautiful. I described it as when you shake hands with someone that you know just picked their nose. Like, that's what it was like. It was just so, like, you could tell she was physically grossed out. But we'll get to that in a second.
Yes.
This is the Rebel News Daily Roundup. It's normally hosted by David Menzies. Sometimes I get along for the ride. And it's where we talk about the news of the day and things that we're working on here at Rebel News. Completely unscripted. So sometimes we get a little off track, but we'll do our best to keep it, sort of between the lines if we can. And we have the help of Olivia behind the board to help us stay on track. We're streaming on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, Twitter, and Getter. But if you want to interact with us here at Rebel News and support the work that we do out of the goodness of your heart, because you want the little network that could to keep on fighting every single day, might I suggest you watch us on Rumble or Odyssey. Those two platforms allow for paid chats. And It allows you to interact with us, and we will read your chats at the end of the show. And if you have a question or a comment or story idea or just something you even want our opinions on, put it in a paid chat, see what happens.
And Sheila, we will indeed get right to the, as you called it, the handshake heard around the world, although I don't think handshakes make noise.
Seen around the world.
Seen around the world. And then an added thing, we just have to add this in, and the crew is, keying up the most important points. It was President Joe Biden's State of the Union speech last night. I think he had a record. He broke the fact checker device within 3 minutes of talking. There's 3 whoppers, like I said, in the first couple of minutes that I could not believe he was spinning in a pro-Biden administration / Democratic state / Dr. Anthony Fauci way. And so we'll talk about the 3 biggest lies in 2 minutes of Biden moving his lips last night. And then there's no sense going on because I really don't want to sicken our audience or cause them to go into cardiac arrest. It was that.
Yeah, I mean, we've already lived through the Grammys.
That's right. So why don't we, if our audience hasn't seen it yet, Sheila, why don't we show clearly a handshake that was, how shall we say it?
Reluctant, I think.
I was thinking it was experienced differently by the 2 parties.
That was one of my jokes, Mike Danielle Smith, my premier, experiencing this handshake a little differently. Let's show it.
Yeah, what's that?
Look, one more time. She's, everybody has an instinct, right? Like someone extends their hand, you automatically reach for it. It's just some cultural memory that we all have in our bones. But she extended her hand, and then she's like, wait, I think he's gross and I don't like this guy. So she pulled her hand away, and then along comes, so she's holding her hand like this, and along comes Justin Trudeau grabbing another woman when she doesn't want to be grabbed by him. That's the Trudeau way. And my timeline, by the way, on Twitter is full of feminists who are really angry that Danielle Smith did not submit to their man, Justin Trudeau. Well, they're like, oh, why didn't she just shake his hand? Why didn't she? I thought you people were all about consent. And that didn't look very much like she consented to a friendly handshake with that guy. So, they're very upset that Danielle Smith did not submit to their leader, this powerful man. And I'm really proud of her, quite frankly, because it shows that she's honest. Even her body language is honest, that she couldn't hide her disgust for him. Like when he turns and he's got his big stupid grin to the camera and she's like, oh, she just is sort of straight faced.
Oh, her face spoke volumes, Sheila. No, but you're quite right. Here's Danielle Smith, looks like a very nice lady. And almost the look on her face was that she has her human hand there, and there's some enormous lobster claw
a lizard hand
coming out of the tank, right? And I want to say this, Sheila. One thing that temporarily went away the last couple of years was the handshake, because COVID, we're supposed to be social distancing, so that went out of vogue. And I'm going to make a plea here. Can we
the handshake.
Pardon me?
I like the handshake. The stupid elbow bump. No, next time put it in your ribs.
Yeah, no, I don't like the elbow bump. I don't like the fist pump. No. But I will say one thing based on some handshakes that have gone wrong for me over the years, meaning that I've reached out and I've shaken the hand of a person and it's cold and clammy and wet and I hate and soft. It's like, it's like a mannequin you're shaking hands with. Can we not, I'll call it appropriate in a positive way from Japanese culture, the bowing of the head. So there's no touching, there's no transference of cooties. And you know what? That would have been the way out for Danielle Smith last night. She puts her hands behind her back and she does the gentle Japanese bow. And could you imagine the embarrassment of Trudeau? There's this hand, this stillborn hand just hanging there, and there's no hand coming unless you're going to reach back to Danielle Smith's waist at the rear end. So that's what I would have done. And by the way, if anyone's saying, oh, there's Menzies saying appropriate Japanese culture, I mean in a good way. I'm saying this is positive, right? So it's not cultural appropriation, Sheila Gunn Reid, it's cultural appreciation.
Yeah, it's cultural adoption. Now, Danielle Smith shook his hand like someone who doesn't know where that hand has been. Like, that was her reaction. It just, good for her. Good for her. And there are a lot of the NDPers are like, this is how it's done. And they're tweeting pictures of Rachel Notley being gregarious and submissive with Trudeau. And we didn't get that from Danielle Smith of the Sovereignty Act. That was the Sovereignty Act handshake in real time right there.
Good golly, what's happened to the feminist movement, Sheila? And another thing, I bet you the unspoken reason for the reluctance to shake Justin Trudeau's hand, much like, well, we once had a former mayor here in this neck of the woods, Mel Lastman. He shook the hands of a Hells Angels member, and that, by Mel's haters, that was always brought up. I'm thinking that Danielle Smith did not want to be, portrayed like Premier Doug Ford, who is probably hugging Justin Trudeau these days. The relationship is so intense that this is not a good look for her. I would gather the vast majority of Albertans despise Prime Minister Trudeau. So why does the savior, why does Danielle Smith want to be seen making nice with him? I'm sure that was what was going through her head, that, oh gosh, this can hurt me politically, me being seen in a chummy way with Prime Minister Blackface McGroper.
Yeah, and to Jason Kenney's credit, he was well aware of those optics too. I think there's a photograph of the two of them exchanging a handshake, and Jason Kenney, he shook his hand, but you could tell he was purposeful in his reaction on his face, that he wasn't enjoying it. Now, speaking of not enjoying your time with Justin Trudeau, I think that was the theme of Danielle Smith's meetings with the Prime Minister, and she had to have known that all eyes of the country were on her, because her first flagship piece of legislation was, we're going to fight with Justin Trudeau. It's called the Sovereignty Act. And anytime the federal government puts a pinky into provincial legislation or provincial jurisdiction, it's now written into Alberta law that we have an obligation to fight back and push them back out, instead of just saying, okay, well, we agree or we don't agree or it's not worth the fight. In Alberta, it's going to always be worth the fight because that's the law now. And so Justin Trudeau was talking about his stupid just transition policies, which means he'll just transition you into unemployment and then the poorhouse, and how he's going to phase out Alberta's energy industry. And Danielle Smith reiterates, look, your just transition doesn't involve any consultation with us. You're going to do this to us, not with us, and we're having none of it. So good for her, prickling back at Justin Trudeau. You can tell she's a smart woman in control of a pretty stupid man here. So let's show this. And by the way, feminists, where are you? This is great.
I did write a letter to the Prime Minister a couple of weeks ago expressing concern about some of the major initiatives that have been announced without much consultation in Alberta that stand to have a huge impact on our province. The just transition legislation that gives the impression that the energy sector is going to be phased out. It's not going to be phased out. We're transforming away from high intensity emissions to lower emissions. I think we have some shared priorities on that. LNG export to reduce emissions using the green transfer mechanism to get credit here. That would also help British Columbia, working on critical minerals, hydrogen, geothermal, lithium. I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to find some common ground. I'm also concerned about the green electricity regulations. Our province has 90% of our electricity grid on natural gas, and so an early phase out of natural gas is just simply not going to result in a reliable and affordable option for our province. And also proposed emissions cap on the energy sector. We've said very clearly that an aggressive emissions cap, such as was initially proposed, would really be a production cap. Yeah, because there isn't a feasible way for us to achieve that within 8 years. So with that, I thought we'll find some common ground on some of those issues today, because I think it's going to be important for Alberta and for all of Canada that we need to find common ground so that we can continue to move forward on addressing these issues together.
You know, Sheila,
Now,
because...
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the audio is bad, but that's federal government for you. They can't even organize a press conference, it's literally their job. They have communications people do this. These people want to run the economy. They couldn't organize a rock fight in a gravel pit. It's terrible.
That's a good line. No, I was just going to say, because the audio was so bad, and me being a bear of very little brain, I get distracted easily, and I couldn't help but notice, yet again, Trudeau's doing the psychedelic sock routine. And did you also notice, Sheila, Premier Smith had a bottle of water? Nothing, no soup for you when it comes to Justin Trudeau. Look, there's just one bottle there. Or was that a communal bottle of water? Boy, I'm sure we'd see some really harsh body language from Premier Smith if that were the case.
You know, the audio is bad there again because, my conspiracy alarms are like, oh, they don't want the world to hear Danielle Smith given Justin Trudeau the business for 2 minutes straight while he has to sit there and take it. But that's really what happened there. Yeah. One of them looked pretty darn prime ministerial, and it was not Justin Trudeau. She sat there and just rattled off everything Justin Trudeau has done to hurt the Alberta energy sector and how he's done it without any consultation or involvement from us. And she lays out sort of where they're going to push back. And then she says, we need a strong, prosperous Alberta for the benefit of all Canada. So you have to get out of our way and let us do these things. And he just sat there silently because you couldn't even argue. First of all, it's not the right place to argue. And she knew that. So she knew he couldn't say anything. But she's not wrong. She's looking out for the interests of Canada. He's not.
But Sheila, he sat there silently, as you noted, but did you notice his body language, which was for most of that clip, he's nodding his head in agreement. He's not doing this. No.
Do you know what?
Right.
I watch body language experts on YouTube all the time. The behavior panel, they do a really great job. And if you look, it's two things are happening here. His duper's delight, so his stupid grin. Because and then his body language gives away the fact that she's right. He can't hide it.
How beautiful would it have been if Premier Smith wore one of our Justin Castro t-shirts to that?
Send one to her office.
I mean, we can dream, can't we? That's what happens in my Menzoidian fantasy world, right?
Sorry, before we move along, because I know we have another video clip from this. I'm not sure if the audio is any better. But I dropped something in the live stream chat, and it's directly related to Justin Trudeau's just transition and his pursuit of net zero, because I want to show you what happens when a company tries to do this. And it unfolded over the course of about 4 years here in Alberta. It is the nautical methanol plant. And so I'm just going to pop it open on my screen here. So the pursuit of Trudeau's net zero climate agenda euthanizes a $4 billion Alberta methanol project. Calgary-based nautical plant was initially proposed to cost $2 billion before the CEO set out on an aggressive pursuit of net zero emissions in the midst of the COVID-19 economic uncertainty. Nautical's proposed Grand Prairie blue methanol plant. So halfway through this, they underwent a green reset, as I call it in the article, ballooning the cost by 100%. The project was to turn, and this is the thing, it was a genius project if they didn't try to do the whole green reset thing in the middle of it. It was to turn low value methane, which is sort of a waste product from natural gas production, into methanol, which would be exported for heating fuel in Asia, which is clean burning as opposed to coal, and to make glues, formaldehyde, and antifreeze. So they were going to take a waste product and do something really great with it, For $2 billion, it was going to create 5,000 construction jobs and about 1,200 permanent direct and indirect jobs. And it was going to be a 35-year lifespan on this project, and it had direct buy-in from the Indigenous groups. But then the CEO, I forget his name, Mark Tonner, he decided that we're going to, right in the middle of it, say, you know what, we're going to introduce carbon capture because we want to get this thing to net zero. Carbon capture is very expensive, by the way. Depending on how you do it, like there's a carbon capture plant just up the road from me at Shell Scotford. It makes a little bit of sense, although I don't believe that carbon is bad for the atmosphere, but we have these salt caverns underneath and they utilize those to store the carbon. Fine. But in the middle of, so the pandemic hits and these guys think, wow, the economy is terrible. You know what we should do? Balloon the cost of this 100% by introducing carbon capture. This is what the CEO said. There just had to be a change in plant design and the execution strategy and a big move to net zero. Why did there just have to be one? Because it was not mandated. They just did it.
Well, Sheila, just to clarify, this is not a politician or a bureaucrat. This is the CEO of the company?
The CEO, Mark Tonner. And he said the company just wanted to get in front of a trend with its own carbon cutting emissions or initiatives. He said it makes Nautical the first company, virtue signaling, obviously, to introduce net zero or blue methanol on a world scale. And he admitted the green design would add some costs to the project. It doubled the cost. But Tonner's not blaming himself, you see, although his mistake euthanized 5,000 construction jobs and 1,200 direct and indirect jobs after the fact. He's blaming Danielle Smith.
What?
Yes. He blamed the lack of a favorable royalty deal, first promised to the company by former NDP Premier Rachel Notley in a campaign announcement in 2019. The deal, at the end of the day, would amount to $80 million in royalty tax credits, but only after the project was completed. So I'm not sure how this affects construction costs, Mark Tonner. Sounds like you're the guy who nuked the construction costs. But why did Mark Tonner think that Danielle Smith should be on the hook for a campaign promise made by the loser of the election? He told the Calgary Herald very recently, we had to stop now he doesn't blame Danielle Smith directly, but he's blaming Danielle Smith indirectly. We had to stop the project because we had to bring together a number of parties, including investors and the provincial government. And as it turns out, one of the parties didn't fulfill their commitment. Let's put it that way. And we ran out of time. Danielle Smith didn't commit to anything to you. Rachel Notley did, and she lost. Not only that, I'm reliably informed by Jagmeet Singh that the NDP is against subsidies to big oil. But the NDP in Alberta, they're like, where's the subsidies, Danielle? Why didn't you subsidize them? Keeps going.
Sheila, if I may add in there, it sounds like to me from what you're reading that the person who didn't fulfill their commitment is the chief executive officer. The CEO's role is to make money for the company, for shareholders, and he's going off on this tangent of carbon capture and whatnot. I mean, that's the polar opposite of what this project should be, as far as I can tell.
Right. And I would suggest if you care about carbon emissions, and I don't, but he nuked a project because he cared so deeply about them. You're shipping methanol for heating fuel all the way to Asia. Guess what you're offsetting? Coal, wood. Animal dung. Great. Maybe that's carbon zero, right? Like maybe that's net zero if you're offsetting major emitters, again, if you care about those sorts of things, with something you created from a waste product, which was a good idea in the first place, but they managed to ruin it. Here's what the NDP had to say, though. We would like to know whether the government did everything it could. This is what the NDP energy critic told the Herald. The government owes an explanation to Albertans to tell them they didn't just let this investment go away, that they didn't just let these jobs disappear. We're broke. We elected the UCP on the mandate to repair the damage to the economy and the province's financial situation done by the likes of Kathleen Gainley, the NDP energy critic. We are just now recovering as far as credit upgrades are going from the, I think, close to a dozen that we had under the NDP. And these people want us to bail out big oil. Look, I like big oil. My husband works for big oil. But I want them to thrive on their own. And I want us to remove the barriers for them to thrive on their own. And I don't want them to put up their own barriers either through needless virtue signaling. But let this be a lesson. This is what net zero, either mandated or bizarrely pursued on your own, does to a project. Balloons the cost by 100%. It leaves them relying on government bailouts, which the government has no money. It's our money. And the project just goes away. And it looks like 6,000 jobs along with it.
So, Sheila, what is the unspoken reason the CEO of this company is doing this? Because I can't connect the dots here.
He's just like every other CEO, from what I understand, where they're just woke and like Coke CEO, like where they're just disconnected, that they, whatever their hobby horse is, they're willing to pursue it to the detriment of the investors. Disney.
Unbelievable. And also, they've got to come up with a different term than just transition, because I don't know about you, Sheila. I think transition, that word, has been debased in this world of she, he's, and he, hers, and frankenfemmes, and all the rest. As soon as I see those letters, TRANS, I know something bad is coming down the pike.
Well, and what's just about sacrificing somebody else's job for your political ideology? Where's the justice in that? Okay, let's go to this last Danielle Smith clip, and then we'll do an ad break. This is her, this is Trudeau pretending to care about us. Let's go to this.
I'm sure we'll also talk about Albertans and how we can make sure we're supporting them, and how Albertan energy workers and workers in general have been extraordinarily important for the success of Canada over many, many decades, and we need to make sure they continue to be strong into the future as well. The world needs Albertan know-how, Albertan energy, and Albertan solutions for the coming years, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work with the Government of Alberta on delivering for people.
Well, you better believe that Albertans have a special brand of know-how. They have to keep thinking about how to operate in a dominion in which Ottawa, under the Trudeau Liberals, is trying to cripple their biggest industry. Wouldn't you say, Sheila?
What a joke. Like, Danielle Smith just sat there and listed off all the ways he's trying to put Alberta energy workers out of work. And he just said, we have to support them. We have to help them. They've been really important to this country. Okay, perfect. Leave us alone. Yeah. That's all we want. Just leave us alone. Let us work. Let us work. Let us do all the hard, ugly work. And you can just sit back and reap the rewards. That's what we want to do. But they won't even let us do that.
Yeah. And, you're so right, Sheila. If they did nothing, that would be exponentially better than what they're doing right now. If they simply did nothing. But apparently that's too much of an ask. Hey, folks, we got to take a quick ad.
We can't even appeal to their laziness. It's very sad.
That's right. Folks, we got to take a quick ad break. And when we come back on the other side, let's just play a few minutes of the beginning of the Joe Biden State of the Union address. We won't go further than a few minutes because, we're not into any kind of harm to our viewers. So let's run that ad and we'll be right back.
I am speaking to you at a moment of grave crisis, when violent and fanatical men are attempting to destroy the unity and the freedom of Canada.
But after weeks of dangerous and unlawful activities, after weeks of people being harassed in their neighborhoods and small businesses forced to close,
as democracy flourishes in Canada,
we don't always agree, and that's okay.
Because individual liberty is cherished in Canada.
Our government will always defend freedom of expression and freedom of peaceful assembly.
It has now been demonstrated to us by a few misguided persons
After evidence of increased ideologically motivated violent extremism activity across the country,
just how fragile a democratic society can be.
it became clear that local and provincial authorities needed more tools to restore order and keep people safe.
These are matters of the utmost gravity, and I want to tell you what the government is doing to deal with them.
The federal government has invoked the Emergencies Act.
The public's legitimate right to know why the government proclaimed an emergency and whether the actions it took were appropriate.
It is our view that there was no justification whatsoever to invoke the Emergencies Act.
It's so tough to watch. There's no reason for that. They were literally running the horses through the crowd.
The police came straight to me and he targeted me and he took his gun of tear gas and he actually shot me directly in my legs.
Was it worth invoking the Emergencies Act, ma'am, to trample on the rights and freedoms of Canadians?
Why do you think excessive honking means that the government should strip citizens away from their rights?
Our next and final witness is Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Order à l'ordre.
I love that title, Trudeau on trial, if only, as in if only in a court of law.
By the way, I should tell everybody, if you are not able to make it to one of our in-person screenings, and we're quickly doing our best to put together some more, there's pretty high demand for that. And the tickets in Calgary at Canyon Meadows Cinemas are selling out very, very quick. And we're working to put together an Edmonton show, hopefully, and some other locations in the country. But if you are a subscriber to Rebel News Plus, it's there already if you want to see it. And if you're not a subscriber to Rebel News Plus, where you get access to Ezra's nightly show, my once a week show, and other exclusive content, let this be a reason for you to subscribe today, because the movie Trudeau on Trial is already there.
Fantastic. And Sheila, let's play just a brief excerpt of Joe Biden's State of the Union address last night. At the beginning, I think the fact checker machine exploded just in 3 huge lies uttered in the first minute and a half. So let's run a little bit about that, and I'll come back and I'll explain what had my jaw resting on the linoleum last night after watching this president speak.
2 years ago, the economy was reeling. I stand here tonight after we've created, with the help of many people in this room, 12 million new jobs. More jobs created in 2 years than any president's created in 4 years, because of you all, because of the American people. 2 years ago, and 2 years ago, COVID had shut down, our businesses were closed, our schools were robbed of so much, and today, COVID no longer controls our lives. And 2 years ago, democracy faced its greatest threats in civil war, and today, though bruised, our democracy remains unbowed and unbroken.
Yep. Okay, Sheila, in the space of about a minute and change, he said 3 huge lies there. The first one, I stand here tonight after we have created, with the help of many people in this room, 12 million new jobs. No, you didn't, you big liar. These are jobs coming back after people had been sent home for the COVID mandates over the last 2 years. These are not brand new jobs. Lie number 2. Quote, COVID had shut down, our businesses were closed, our schools were robbed of so much. No. The coronavirus didn't shut down businesses and schools. Democratic governors in blue states did.
Right.
It was people, politicians of a certain ilk that shut down their own economies and put people out of work. And the third biggest lie, I mean, give me a break. Sheila, quote, and 2 years ago, and he's referring to January 6th, of course, democracy faced its greatest threat since the Civil War, end quote. World War II, World War I, the bombing of Pearl Harbor, 9/11.
Cold War?
You're telling me those weren't threats? That a bunch of, I mean, Sheila, as I've often said, when I first saw those photos of the people in the Capitol building, it looked like Comic-Con to me. That guy with the horns,
Imagine thinking a guy in an obnoxious hat taking a selfie in Nancy Pelosi's office constitutes the single largest threat to democracy. Yeah, it probably shouldn't have happened. And as I saw on Twitter last night, if you took a selfie in the Capitol on January 6th, you're probably in jail still. However, if you were on Epstein's client list, you're probably given TED Talks.
And Sheila, what you just said there probably shouldn't have happened. I agree with you. And it wouldn't have happened if Nancy Pelosi had accepted President Trump's offer of 15,000 National Guardsmen in Washington, D.C. that date. And he was blown off. So it would not have happened if you had that police presence there.
Right.
But, I mean, to call that the greatest threat that U.S. democracy has faced since the Civil War, which I believe goes back to the 1860s. Are you out of your mind, Mr. President?
Do you know what I think he might be? Which sends me to this clip that I want to show you. Because do you think Joe Biden is lying, or is he so feeble-minded he has no clue?
Well, I can tell you this, Sheila. This speech is not what he wrote. It's written for him. He just reads a teleprompter. There's no way in hell, even with the lies in it, that he wrote this. These are the puppet masters, right?
I think you're being generous when you say he's reading a teleprompter. Can you, Olivia, throw to that clip? Pay very close attention to what Joe Biden is saying, if you can even understand what he's saying. Because I think the word he says in the middle, we have to be very careful, guys, is Frisian jibs. Frisian jibs? Frisian jibs? Anyway, you have to listen to the whole context to even try to figure out what this word is. I think I've figured it out. David, I want to know what you think he says afterwards.
All right, I'll listen closely.
Make no mistake. If you try anything to raise the cost of precision jobs, I will veto it.
One more time. Kamala Harris is really against the rising price of refrigerants.
Make no mistake. If you try anything to raise the cost of precision jobs, I will veto it.
Sheila, I think you're being unnecessarily hard on the president. It was as loud and clear as a bell. The word he said was,
yeah. I think he had a mini stroke. That's a transient ischemic event happening in real time in his brain. He obviously has some sort of bleed or something happening in there. I think he said prescription drugs, or tried to, before his tongue got too big for his mouth and his dentures loosened. I don't know. And Kamala Harris just jumps out of her seat and she's like, yeah, go, Joe, that you're the most articulate leader we've ever had. I don't, as a Democrat, I don't know how somebody would ever think that is okay to have that man as your president. So Democrats, tell me, are you okay with the elder abuse that we see before us here?
Actually, Sheila, I just Googled while you were speaking, and evidently what he said was the Klingon language for the phrase, perhaps today is a good day to die.
I've got a joke. I'm going to keep that joke to myself.
There are people having wedding ceremonies done in the Klingon language. What do you think about that? If you had to renew your vows, Sheila, would you do it in a fake language from science fiction?
No. You know what? It was funny because in my Amazon cart, I have some a Star Trek memorabilia for you next time I see you. I'm sure you need to top up on those dilithium crystals mints I gave you that one time.
Oh, they don't use the lithium crystals anymore in the next generation version. And by the way, will you keep teasing me with all this merch you're going to give me, like that beautiful Friday the 13th camp crystal?
I gave it to Guillaume. I don't know what happened to it after that.
What do you want me to do about that? Shake
if you
Guillaume
see him
down?
wearing that, yes, he's half your size. I'm gonna shake. Okay, we should keep moving because we've got a ton of stuff to talk about, including our latest fight with the federal government.
Okay.
Do you know what we're talking about?
You know what? I believe Mr. Producer Efren said we have 2 super chats. So while we sort this out, do you want to read that?
Sure, I can get to those, but it's for those who are looking, it's right after the ad break, Olivia. Alrighty. So we have multiple super chats. Okay, we've got TN Explorer, Tennessee in here. I've been following Rebel News since 2020. Thank you all for your bravery and your stand for freedom. Love you guys. Well, that's very, very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
We've got one from Western Isles girl. Holy, we've got a real international chat happening here. $5. Hello from Bonnie, Scotland. Just been thrown out of a ladies' loo today for dealing with a big bearded male wearing lipstick and a Dolly Parton wig.
Oh,
David doesn't have a beard.
Yeah, that's my alibi. That's despicable. What's going on with Scotland? I mean, there's been all these so-called anti-turf protests in Scotland happening basically, as far as I'm concerned, Sheila, this is the modus operandi of a pervert, of a sexual predator. The idea of embracing a costume because it's politically correct and very woke to do so, pretending you're a member of the other sex to go in. And even if you do something like, I was talking to Dre about this, you have something in BC right now, I believe in Nanaimo, where there's somebody, a man who's pretending to be a woman. And what he's doing in the change room is he's looking under the other stall of a woman changing into her bathing suit.
That's how I kick your teeth in.
Yeah,
for sure.
But Sheila, here's the thing. If that was a biological female looking under the stall of another biological female, you would quite rightly be outraged and you would inform the staff and they would probably read the riot act. But this time, no. This is transgenderism, and this is not about equal rights. This is about extra special rights, and we dare not say anything, whether it's a peeping Tom at an aquatic center or a guy teaching shop class in Oakville with 2 enormous fake Z-cup breasts. Yep, it's all about special rights, not equal rights, Sheila.
What did I call it in the meeting this morning? Trans supremacy? And we're in fetish country. Obviously, that's what fetish weirdos do. We've got one more chat, and then let's go to our latest fight with the federal government. We've got a legal challenge against them. Adam, I think this is Adam Ottawa, or the man formerly known as Adam Ottawa. $5. Hey there, rebels. Coming home from vacation through a U.S. airport really, really shows how ours are broken. The security was polite, calm, competent, efficient, with 5 lanes open. Shameful. You know, I heard the same thing from my daughter, who travels all the time for sports. She's in and out of the country. Traveling to American airports and back again. And she said it's just like, it's a zoo in Canada.
Yep.
And completely different in the United States. She's in, Florida quite a bit for her sport. And she said it's just like night and day landing in Florida compared to coming back to Canada. It's completely different.
And maybe one of the reasons for that, Sheila, is that dead dog with fleas, ArriveCan, which did not speed up the lines, which always bugged out, and which was supposed to cost $80,000, but the off-the-lot price was $54 million. How is that even possible? And I'm just speaking of that because later today on our site, I have an interview with the Democracy Fund's lawyer, Alan Honner, who has some breaking, unbelievable news. Yeah, I know ArriveCan is gone and done with. Is there anything more to be said? Wait till you hear what Alan Honor has to say. This is the worst thing about ArriveCan. And I should say, it's funny, Sheila, the other month I was in Pearson, and which, as our viewers might know from our reports, the worst airport in the entire world. That's how it was rated. And yes, we're including third world nations in that. And I brought this up with the spokes thingy there, and she said, oh, just to let you know, we made improvements. We're now the fourth worst. She said that as a badge of honor.
Good job, guys.
The absolute
so what are you
worst.
ahead of, like Bombay?
And
Darfur. Does Darfur have an airport?
So I'll have to look into that, because I'm not sure what to believe these days. So, but the fact that
what's the capital of Rwanda? Do they have an airport? They must. So I just listed the three that are probably behind Toronto.
Yeah, it looked to me that international airports in certain parts of the world where there are hostiles trying to shoot down planes with land-to-air missiles, they had a better record than Pearson International.
Yeah, where the warlords are running the airport. Yeah. Great.
Oh, my
Pearson
goodness.
lost my daughter's luggage for like 8 weeks. She went to Ireland without any of her equipment. They lost it all.
Unbelievable. And I think one of the worst things of all, Sheila, at least your daughter packed a bunch of inanimate objects, I imagine most of it being clothes. Imagine you're transporting a pet, and this has happened, where animals have almost died. And we did a story on that. And the most disgraceful thing is that this woman who had a rescue dog from the Dominican Republic, and they couldn't find it for hours and hours on end. And remember, it needs food, it needs water. And the attitude of the folks at Pearson, they didn't give a rodent's rectum. She finally, thank God, found a kind-hearted Canadian Border Services Agency guard, and he took her on a tour of Pearson's Island of Lost Luggage, and they finally found the crate literally in the nick of time. That is despicable. If you know there are living things that might die and you don't care about that, I think there's some serious rehiring we have to do at that place, Sheila, right from the CEO of the Greater Toronto Airport Authority on down.
I think we need to go up higher to Omar Al-Jabra, our transport minister. He's the worst, the absolute worst. He destroyed the airline industry in Canada in his short time as the transport minister. Let's go to this.
Wait a second. What's your nickname for him, by the way, Sheila? Hobgoblin.
Hobgoblin.
I love that.
Perched on the side of a French building like a gargoyle somewhere. We've got our latest fight, as I alluded to, with the federal government.
Yep.
It's National Post has the headline. Liberal minister breached the charter by blocking Rebel News chief on Twitter. The case is raising novel questions about government use of social media platform, often called a digital public square. Now, I can tell you that I have some experience with this because Catherine McKenna blocked me when she was the environment minister, and then she was thankfully unelected in her riding, so I didn't have to worry about that anymore. But as a journalist who covers climate policy as one of my key beats, I couldn't find out what she was saying unless I had a troll account, which I do, which you'll never, you guys will never know. But that was the only way that I had to know. And I shouldn't have to go to those lengths. I'm a Canadian citizen. Not only that, I'm a journalist and a Canadian citizen trying to get information from my elected officials on the platform that they use to disseminate the information. That's crazy that they block that information from the public. And so Ezra's suing them.
And you know what, Sheila? I think, sorry to interrupt, but I think we're going to win because, correct me if I'm wrong, hasn't there already been a precedent set on this? It might have been the ex-mayor of Ottawa, Jim Watson, who blocked somebody, a constituent, I imagine. Am I getting this right? Because this is really ringing a bell here with me.
I'm not sure. But this National Post article goes on to say that we have a constitutional challenge. Ezra alleges, it's not alleges, he did violate, the Environment Minister, Steven Guilbeault, violated Ezra's constitutional right to free expression when he Twitter blocked the rebel head. Levant has called Guilbeault a convicted criminal, incompetent, and stupid.
Correct.
Check. Responding to the minister's post on Twitter, but he says he has a right to follow and comment on the minister. You know what you do? You mute him. If you don't want to hear what Ezra has to say about you, you mute him. But if you're using Twitter to disseminate government information, not only that, if you are using government staff to operate your Twitter account, which they all do, then you have you should have no ability to block the tax-paying public from following your Twitter account.
100%.
Yeah. So anyways, Fred Kozak, great lawyer, by the way, he has acted both for and against Ezra, says.
No kidding.
I love Fred because he leads with his chin, right? Doesn't always agree with rebels' opinions or tactics, but believes there's merit to the argument. And so we're headed to court with these guys. Olivia, what's the website that we're using? If people want to help us make Twitter a more free place and hold these politicians to account, what's the website where people can pitch in to cover our legal costs to embarrass Steven Guilbeault in court? Okay, perfect. She's just looking that up for us. But
by the way, while you're speaking about that, Sheila, just a quick anecdote. A viewer reached out to us a few days ago, and I hope this is a mistake because I thought Elon Musk was all about opening up Twitter again. But she used the phrase against a federal politician, a Justin Trudeau Liberal, go jump in the lake. And she got a 30-day suspension, I believe, for the, the health and safety thing, go jump in the lake. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sheila. That's not a call to you actually jumping in the lake and dying of drowning or hypothermia. It means go away, right? Kind of like on this National Kite Flying Day, when you say go fly a kite, I don't mean go and fly a kite in February. I mean buzz off. So there seems to be a little problem with some people these days with that which is known as nuance.
Yeah, I mean, go jump in a lake. Oh, thanks. I will, definitely. These people are so stupid and uptight. I will tell you that this became a bit of a problem, these politicians blocking their critics on Twitter. And it happened during the Alberta forest fires and the floods. Because I was blocked. I have a large Twitter following. Most of it, I think, is based in Alberta. And I was blocked from following the Alberta Environment Minister, Shannon Phillips, when she was sharing locations of fires and road closures and floods. I couldn't get the information for myself from her Twitter account, and that sometimes is the fastest way to get it back out. But I also couldn't retweet it to my followers. And so I thought, you know what? Because she's NDP and she just hates me.
That's ludicrous. That's not a valid reason.
No, of course it's not. And frankly, blocking people who need to access Alberta environment information on Twitter, that's dangerous. That's dangerous, especially if you're using your Twitter platform to tell where the emergency evacuation shelters are, or road closures, or where you can get supplies and things like that. Which way the wind is blowing, where the fire is expected to move. She was using her Twitter account for that, but also blocking people from following her.
And it's all based on an ideological disagreement with our company. You know what? Yes. Does anything scream pettiness more than that, Sheila?
No, they are petty. They are petty. And you're not, we're not entitled to information from them unless we agree with them on all
things. Even though we pay their salaries.
100%. And I think that's going to be the crux of some of the legal argument there. By the way, thank you, Olivia, for digging that up. It's twitterlawsuit.ca if you'd like to pitch in to help us fight back and hold these politicians to account. I know that when Catherine McKenna was the environment minister, she had at least 24 people operating her social media accounts. An army of people. And she had the worst Twitter account because she would say stuff like Happy Penguin Day and then tweet out a picture of a puffin. And
I remember that.
I would go back and get the documents, the planning documents on her tweets, and I started checking off names. I'm like, there are 24 people who don't know the difference between a penguin or a puffin, and they were planning her tweets, scheduling them like 3-4 weeks in advance. So yeah, we are entitled to know what these people are doing, and we're entitled to look at their accounts. If you don't want me to look at your account and get a personal account, no government staff involved, and you're just, you know what, create it like my troll account. But I don't even think you should be verified as a government official if you're going to block people. Use the mute function.
Sheila, how can that be possible? 12 people solely working on her social media?
24.
24.
24.
Like, I'm struggling for words here. And even with that amount of oversight, I guess penguin, puffin, they're both birds. They both begin with the letter P. Maybe that's, we can give them that. But that's incredible. Never has so many people been hired to do so little.
Yes. Two things we should touch on before we go. One is very important. Well, they're both very important.
Yep.
So we have a victory to tell you about. Thanks to everybody who pitches in at the Democracy Fund. Your crowdfunded donations set 2 pastors free in the Maritimes. So can we throw up the article on Pastor Phil, if you wouldn't mind, please? So these are 2 pastors in New Brunswick, Phil Hutchins and I forget Cody's last name. It all started not this Thanksgiving, last Thanksgiving. The police barged into the church, arrested the pastors, took them away. Then the church was put under constant surveillance. Then they were forced to basically go underground. They rented a tent because they took their building or said they couldn't worship in the building. Phil was held for 7+ days in prison. 7 days. This pastor was arrested and held for just holding church. Nobody was there that didn't want to be. And when they moved outside, then it wasn't good enough for the state. Then they said, is this inside or is this outside? Is your tent inside or does it constitute being outside, depending on the walls? And it was just this absolute nonsense that they were doing everything they could to prosecute Pastor Phil. And good news is the last of his legal troubles are over.
Excellent.
Everything is done. He's won. And I couldn't be more pleased about it. And covering the story of Pastor Phil was so hard because you couldn't even get into the province at the time to report on what they were doing to him because they had a travel ban into the province. And it's Cody Butler. Thank you very much. Cody Butler. I think Cody's the youth pastor there. And they didn't want them singing. They wanted contact tracing in the church. And their lawyer, Jonathan Martin, fought back valiantly for them. And I'm just so happy that this is over because they're good men and they just deserve to
well,
be
that's
able
great
to live
news,
their lives.
Sheila. And I'll tell you, not that I'm in the hiring position, but I think it would be great if we did have a correspondent in Atlantic Canada because during COVID, there were so many shenanigans going on in that part of Canada. I think back to our Fight the Fines. It might have been the first one, at least one of the first ones. It was yours, Sheila Gunn Reid. It remains my favorite one. And it was that senior in a Tim Hortons parking lot in his Toyota Corolla with the windows rolled up, just having a muffin and coffee.
Eating his fruit explosion.
And thank God he had the audio recording because if he hadn't, we don't have a story. It would be his word. It'd be a he said, she said kind of thing, Sheila. But the idea, and correct me if I'm wrong because it was your story, why the Mountie was going after this guy with such fervor was that this senior, a man in his 70s, in his Toyota Corolla, if they allowed him to stay in the parking lot, well, you know, that might attract the teenagers. They might come and hang out too.
Teenagers will come. Yeah, they'll come loiter around his car and just like circle around it with skateboards or whatever. I'm like, have you ever met a teenager? Have you ever seen a teenager? The last thing they want to do is go and bother the old people at the Tim Hortons.
I don't know, Sheila. You know, when I was in high school, we used to go on the prowl for senior citizens having their muffin and coffee in a donut store parking lot. And nothing so cool than an old man in a Toyota Corolla having coffee. So, you know.
Yeah, I call up my son and I'm like, hey, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm just hanging out at the Tim Hortons with, I don't know, Esther and Jim. The pensioners, the dumbest thing ever, but and that cop was right off the rev limiter, just like abusive and loud and obnoxious for some reason, for this poor confused man who's like, I'm just eating a muffin, chill. And yeah, it was bad. But going back to sorry, before we move ahead, going back to Pastors Cody and Phil, they were held. So what happened was, the province closes the church, says you can't go back there, and they are like, it's Christmas, we have to hold church. This is a holy time for us. So they get a tent, they go set up a tent, they put heaters up, and then they get a contempt order against them because they put up a tent. And so the province was arguing, no, this is indoors, and they're like, there's not even walls on this thing. This is just like a structure. It would be like standing under an awning, frankly, but that wasn't good enough. They slapped him with a contempt order because it wasn't about following the rules. It was about making sure that they didn't hold services, and that the final contempt order was what was just thrown out.
And Sheila, on that note of them putting up a tent, I am sure in the vicinity there must have been tent cities, homeless people.
For sure.
Yeah. So why do they go after people taking in religious ceremonies since you've stolen their building or locked it down, but you can have a filthy, decrepit tent city and nothing to see here, folks?
Calgary is the worst for this. They're going after Pastor Derek Reimer again. He was client number 2 of Fight the Fines, right behind Pastor Art, again, for feeding the homeless in downtown Calgary. Calgary's forgotten people. And they're still going after him. Now they can't get him on illegal public gatherings. He's been in the same spot for years, because if you are downtown, if you are looking for the homeless, you have to go minister to them where the homeless are. But also there comes a time where the homeless become trained to know that's where you are. So that's where you show up. Now the city is saying, after years and years and years, that you need a permit now to feed the homeless where you are. And they made him move around the corner, and he said, I'm not moving any further, basically, because they'll never find me. And now they're slapping him with tickets for not having a permit to feed the homeless in downtown Calgary. You have to call a bureaucrat who is already failing the homeless before you give a homeless person a sandwich. If you've tried to ride public transportation in Calgary, you know the homeless problem is out of control, and they are doing almost next to nothing to help those people. And the one guy who is, without any government money, is being harassed by the government for doing it.
The world is upside down. And as we reported back in December, same deal in Oshawa, Ontario. You need a permit to go into the park and feed the homeless. And the people, I believe their name is Communities for Freedom. And by the way, that's really what's the story here, Sheila. It's this Good Samaritan Club, but they use the F-bomb. Not the usual one, but freedom. That is what arouses the interest of the bureaucracy and bylaw because, freedom, that's like those trucker convoy people, those occupiers. We got to clamp this down. And the most astonishing thing about that is that they were trying to play within the rules. And they said, okay, we won't venture into Memorial Park. We'll just pull up at the curb and we'll hand the toiletries, the food, the clothing to the homeless that way. And they went, not so fast. If you're going to do that, you need a mobile vending permit, like they're an ice cream truck or something, Sheila.
That's what they're doing here.
Special place in hell. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, you know what? Pastor Derek is saving the people of Calgary money by feeding the homeless. He does it on his own all the time through donations. He doesn't take government money. He just wants the government to leave him alone. This idea that you have to ask some stupid bureaucrat in a cubicle permission and fill out a bunch of paperwork before you can show kindness to your fellow man absolutely infuriates me. And it's why fewer people do it. I'm supposed to be in a meeting, but any excuse not to. No, I'm just kidding. I enjoy our long-winded Wednesday meetings. Let's talk about, we've talked a little bit about Transanity, but Lincoln J is at a drag queen story hour protest, or he was up until moments ago. And it looks like, it's pretty peaceful. The cops are there, which is good for once. Usually the cops stand back, if they take the Vancouver model of policing, stand back and let counter protesters get beaten up. But it looks like they're doing their best to keep the peace, keep everybody apart from each other, and allow everybody their freedom of expression, which is good. But I want to reiterate, I wouldn't go to a drag queen story hour or drag queen event myself. I don't like the idea that these things are held in government institutions like the municipal library. I'm opposed to that. I think if you're going to do it, there should not be government taxpayers' money involved in any of it. And I don't think kids should be there. I don't think this is a place for minors. And I do have a special disdain for parents who take their children to these things to show just how progressive they are, because you're sacrificing your child's innocence on the altar of you wanting to virtue signal to the rest of the world about what a progressive and tolerant parent you are. You're robbing your children of these most important times of their lives. You don't get to be a kid forever, and it's over way too fast in society. So wherever you fall down on this issue, why are you exposing little kids to this? And again, I don't want to pay for it, but if it's in a place where I know kids aren't going to be and it's a private place, none of my business. I won't go. I'll let my dollars do the talking. But doing these places in libraries, but also libraries geared towards little kids, it's gross and it should stop.
Well, Sheila, two things from what you just said. First of all, I am happy that the Ottawa Police Service is there because, there's one of those super new and improved flags. It's got the biopic triangle, and then there's a circle in it.
Don't get attached. They'll have a new flag next year.
It keeps evolving.
They have one every year.
Hey, LGBT, etc. club, subscribe to the design philosophy of less is more, okay? If you keep adding elements to that flag, it's going to look like a quagmire. But the reason I say that is that these people who are supposedly all about tolerance and who always chant love trumps hate, if the police aren't there, and Lincoln was there simply chronicling what's happening, the moment they see who it is or see the mic flash, they will act violently. Lincoln would get physically assaulted. Not by the protesters that say there's something wrong here with an all-ages drag show at a publicly funded building, as Sheila Gunn Reid just addressed, but just for the fact that Lincoln is there. I mean, it goes back to what we talked about earlier with that NDP minister, Sheila, blocking you during the forest fire pandemic, simply on ideological grounds. I'm not going to talk to you. Well, these cats, they're even worse. They believe in the phrase punch a Nazi. And the definition of a Nazi isn't somebody on world conquest or, carrying out a genocide. It is somebody with a differing opinion. And that wouldn't even apply to Lincoln because he's just there. He's got no dog in the race. He's just filming what's going on. Yeah. So there's that. Secondly, Sheila.
I don't even know how Lincoln feels about drag queen story hour.
Neither do I.
I have no idea. And the people accusing him of being a bigot don't know either.
No, they don't. And they can never offer a tangible example. Secondly, Sheila, and I ask this question to you as a mother of children. What mother or father or parental guardian, grandparent, aunt, uncle, you name it, brings a child to one of these, grotesque drag queen shows. Now, listen, I'm not against drag queen shows. I mean, they happen every day, at least until 5 years ago in the gay village before they started going into libraries and other places. But, and it's almost, Sheila, I would argue, you're kind of the outlier if you don't have an all ages drag queen show. That's how fast this virus has spread in 5 years. But Sheila, as a mother, would you entertain for a second bringing one of your kids to one of these shows?
100% not. And if somebody even suggested it to me, I would cut them right out of my life, because I would want to, I would, because what you're doing is grooming or asking me to allow my child to be groomed or to have this overt sexuality normalized for my child. And that's unacceptable. Like I said, you're only little once. That was my philosophy when raising my kids. Right now, my kids are, oh my God, 2 of them are teenagers and 1 is a fully functioning grown man. But they're also only teenagers once. So do teenager things. Don't try to do grown-up things yet. Your whole life will be full of grown-up things. And most of the time, you don't want to do grown-up things. It's monotonous and boring and hard. So be teenagers. Don't lean into adulthood right away. So when I see this, I think you are denying your child these child experiences by making them grow up way too fast. Who would want that for their children? You're already fighting against social media and pop culture and music and movies to preserve your child's innocence. Why would you go and put them at Drag Queen Story Hour unless your virtue signaling is more important than their innocence?
Yeah, I mean, who do you think you are? The people running Disney World, for goodness sakes? Oh, speaking of which, Sheila, I saw something pop up on the Twitter feed. I don't have all the details, but the headline was how Ron DeSantis got the liquor license for a bar in Florida revoked for having one of these all-ages drag queen shows. That's what we need. We need a guy. There we go. I think super producer Olivia's got it up. DeSantis tries to revoke Orlando Philharmonic's liquor license over drag show. Well, we'll see about that. But the very fact that he's taking this stance is so rare, Sheila, and good for Governor DeSantis. He is just hitting it out of the ballpark every day, every way.
You know what? And he is paving the way for other states to do the same.
Yep.
He's sort of taking the slings and arrows so that somebody else can step up and follow in his footsteps, and they will. Before we go, because I am late for that meeting, let's talk. Let's just show this one clip. Josh Alexander, some of you might know that name. He is the young man who was kicked out of his Catholic school in Renfrew County for holding the absolutely completely in alignment with the Canadian Council of Catholic Bishops and Catholic doctrine viewpoint that boys cannot be girls.
So where's the crime?
The crime is that his Catholic school board, run by Catholic administrators and Catholic teachers, disagree. And they said that him not only holding those worldviews, but expressing them would amount to bullying of the trans students.
Unbelievable.
Now, he was suspended from school for organizing a walkout. Now, kids walk out of school all the time for climate change, Black Lives Matter, whatever. They have their little student protests to get out of their system and they go back in. So he thought, I'll do the same. I'll protest in support of the girls in our school who are being denied privacy and their own spaces by boys who want to go to their change rooms and washrooms. He organizes a walkout, a bunch of students join him. Quick protest, but he's suspended. And then they said, oh, well, you can come back, but you can't go to classes with the trans students. And he's like, so me being in the room learning is going to be the problem? No, sorry, you have to get over. The world is a difficult place, and it's difficult for Catholics when you express your Catholic worldview and you're suddenly called a bigot. So these kids who might die if you misgender them, they have to get over themselves. And the school said no. He gets suspended. He tries to go back to school, But he refuses to agree to shut up or not go to his classes that he's already in. So they issue him a trespass notice. And in the interim, the clock runs out on his suspension and he tries to go back to school at the beginning of the second semester. And he gets arrested. He got suspended for the remainder of the school year for not agreeing to the self-censorship provisions. He tries to go back to school at the beginning of the semester. He gets arrested on a trespass notice. So now his grade 11 is gone. He's arrested. Now he's got a trespass charge he's got to fight. And now today he's at the drag queen story hour. I guess this is what you do when you're not allowed to go to school for the crime of being Catholic at a Catholic school. And he was arrested protesting at the drag queen story hour. Lincoln's got the footage. Let's show that.
Why?
I don't know. Let's find out.
But that's not school property, right, Sheila?
No, he's in Ottawa. But Lincoln says he was detained for unknown reasons. Maybe they're calling him a truant. Who knows? Do we have that clip?
Yellow police budget just balanced itself. I don't even know.
Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. Thank you. Just a little bit back. Thank you. Thank you.
So that's that. I don't know. It doesn't look like he's very violent. He's never been violent before.
We have to follow up on that. I want to know what the charge is. He's not on private property from what I can tell. And, doesn't this show how screwed up the world is, Sheila? Once upon a time, I remember, what were they called? Truancy officers on the patrol for kids playing hooky, not being in school, and physically dragging them into school. And now you show up for school and you're going to be arrested for trespass, for wrong thought, for wrong expression. And this expression, these thoughts, these things, this Josh Alexander is saying is completely in harmony with Catholic doctrine. This is unbelievable. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the law in this situation, but I'm betting big time, Sheila, there is one hell of a lawsuit to be filed here. This is a completely outrageous abridgment of this young man's rights. It's shocking.
Josh has a really great lawyer. It's James Kitchen with Liberty Coalition Canada. Some of you may know James from his work with Church in the Vine in Edmonton. He's their lawyer, so he does do some work with the Democracy Fund as well. So he's an excellent lawyer. He's doing everything he can. He tried to appeal the suspension because it's like a quasi-judicial thing. It's basically at the whim of the school board. They can have a witch trial for you without even doing the trial. They can suspend you just by sending a message in an email. He's doing his best. But the treatment of this young man has been atrocious. And as I said, his only crime is expressing his Catholic worldview at a Catholic school. And I'm dying to know where the diocese is on all of this. What does the bishop have to say?
Well,
what does the local priest have to say? Because I'm in the before times, in a better time, when our church wasn't so cowardly, the priest and the bishop would be right down there with that young man. And the Catholic teaching is compassion for the sinner, but do not tolerate the sin. That's where Josh is on this.
Yep.
And yet he's all alone in this. Where's the church to help him?
Well, Sheila, you make no secret that you're Catholic. What the hell's going on here? Pardon my use of the HE double hockey sticks word, but really, what's going on?
It's a church founded by Jesus and run by men. And that's the same everywhere, right? So you have some really great priests who stood up to the lockdowns, stood up to the nonsense, refused to be censored, who attend the March for Life. They're outspoken and they're so strong in the Catholic faith. And then there are others who just put their head down and don't want to ruffle any feathers. And there were those people among the apostles too, right? And so that's the way it's always been. But this young man is living out, I think, Mark 10:22 in real time, and the church is letting him do it alone.
Unbelievable. Well, Sheila, I think we are over time unless we have some chats to read. No, we do not.
Yeah, we're all caught up. We did those early.
Okay, then. Well, my thanks again to super producers Olivia and Efren, and to all of you who tuned in, especially those of you who gave us a few bucks. That's what we depend on here. And, of course, great thanks to my co-host, Sheila Gunn Reid. I think I'm back here tomorrow. I'm pretty sure I am, and I believe it might be the lovely Tamara Ugolini from Coburg, where you sometimes get arrested for going into the beach during a COVID lockdown. And so Tamara will be along with me starting at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. As always, folks, remember, stay safe and stay sane.
Of this Prime Minister, Canadians can barely afford food, fuel, heating our homes. Nicole from Vegreville is struggling because Liberals' carbon tax doubled her gas bill. She says, quote, I don't have an extra $400 to pay. How are Canadians supposed to live? But it's about to get worse when the NDP Liberal costly coalition triples their carbon tax. So when will the Prime Minister stop blaming everyone else, take responsibility and axe his destructive carbon tax?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment. Mr. Speaker, earlier I spoke about families in Alberta, Saskatchewan and Manitoba that were going to start to receive the climate action incentive rebate as of April 1st, but as of July 1st, families in Nova Scotia, PEI and Newfoundland will also be receiving the climate incentive rebate 4 times.